Are 4-year price cycles in Bitcoin officially over? Well, we don't know, but let's talk about what they are and the probabilities each way. Okay, so what is the 4-year price cycle, or for short, the 4-year cycle? Well, Bitcoin's price has always eventually gone up over time, but in the past, for the last 16 years, it's gone up, not in a straight continuous line, but in price cycles. What is a price cycle? A price cycle is where the price of Bitcoin starts to go up, and then it starts going up more, and then it starts going up more, and then you get what's called a blow-off top. A blow-off top is when the price goes up very quickly in a relatively short period of time, and blow-off tops are then followed by a correction. A correction is when the price, because it got so ahead of itself in the blow-off top, comes back and down to something more reasonable, and then the price cycle starts again. Now, historically, the 4-year cycles have been correlated with the halving cycles. So Bitcoin's new supply issuance of new Bitcoin that is issued every 10 minutes to the Bitcoin miners has a cycle that every 4 years it cuts in half. And it just so happens to align with the years of the presidential elections in the United States. So that was 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024. And historically, what has happened is that halving cycle has started the next bull run, meaning up, optimistic run. And that bull run has eventually peaked out the year after the halving in a big parabolic upward swing that is then followed by a significant price correction. Now, over time, the magnitude of those huge upswings has been lower because the asset, Bitcoin as an asset, is more mature, and the price corrections have been shallower, meaning less painful following those huge price runs. But that has been the history of it. The most recent price cycle would have been the 2022, well, let me put it this way, would have started after the 2017 bull run, which then 2018 came way back down. Then it rebuilt in 2019 and 2020, and then 2021 was a huge up year, followed by a price correction in 2022, and then the price rebuilt in 2023, 2024, and so far in 2025. But this time has been very different. And the reason is we have not had a huge parabolic upswing. So the price has marched up nicely. It's gone up in, a handful of days, big swings to the upside. But then rather than going through a correction, the price has then stabilized and ground sideways, sometimes called consolidation, sometimes called chop-solidation, because the price is either chopping sideways or it's consolidating, meaning it's trading in a relatively tight price range. And it's done that for between 3 months and 9 months, and then it goes up again. So the price stayed below $20,000 for a series of months. Then it traded in the 20,000s for a series of months. Then it bounced around in the 30,000s, 40,000s, then up to the 50 to 70,000s. It stayed there for a good while. And then it went up to the 90 to 100,000s. Now we are in the sort of 110 to 120,000. And the question is, how long are we going to be in this $110 to $120,000 range? And are we going to get a huge parabolic price rise? Let me tell you what that looks like if we got one. What it looks like is the price starts to run, and then over a relatively short period of time, the price goes from, let's call it $120,000 up to between $180,000 and perhaps $220,000. And if that price increase happens very quickly over a relatively short period of time, then it tends to be unsustainable at that level. That does not mean we will not end up at 180 or 220,000 eventually. It just means it tends to be unsustainable if it happens very, very quickly, because there's just not enough new adoption of people adopting Bitcoin to sustain it at the price level. So while there's demand, speculative demand to drive the price that high, there's not enough real adoption to hold the price that high. Again, there always is eventually, just not when it all happens very quickly at one time. So if that happens towards the end of this year, early next year, something like that, we suddenly get a price run from, let's call it 120 to somewhere between 180,000 and 220,000, then it is likely, if that happens very quickly, that would be followed by a price correction, and the price would drop back down to, 120,000. If it goes from 220 to 120, that's, not 50%, but it's, 45% or whatever it is. So that is what a price cycle would look like if we get one. But again, this cycle has not looked that way. This cycle has been instead marked by an upswing in the price by maybe 10 or 20%, grind sideways for 3 to 6 months, go up another 10, 20, 30%, grind sideways for 3, 6, 9 months, go up another 10, 20, 30%, grind sideways. Now, so about 60% of the people think we're done with price cycles because the Bitcoin exchange traded funds, ETFs, were approved in January of 2024. So that's been more than 18 months ago. Wall Street is now adopting Bitcoin in a significant way. Lots more people are hedging their bets. This is, bets. There's not the same level of just very speculative retail, meaning retail means non-professional. There's not as many just crazy people sitting in front of their laptops buying and selling Bitcoin who have no idea what they're doing, and that tends to make anything that looks like a price cycle worse, because those people tend to buy on the way up and sell on the way down, which makes cycles more pronounced, versus professional traders who are smart enough to generally not be buying more when something is going crazy up. And then, of course, when it comes back down, they're buying it because it's on sale, which tends to smooth out those cycles. So about 60% of people think that price cycles are behind us and we're not going to get that sort of high magnitude change. But that leaves about 40% who are saying, nope, price cycles are still with us. And what's going to happen is the price is going to start to rise. And then everybody's going to say, well, it just does this. And then we're going to grind sideways. But enough people are going to notice that we just keep grinding sideways and then up, right? Sideways up, sideways up, sideways up, that people are going to say, well, this asset's pretty amazing. Who doesn't want to own an asset that grinds sideways, but then always eventually goes up? And then people will start speculating. People will start using leverage, which means borrowed money, to buy more Bitcoin. And that demand of people who think that price cycles are over is exactly what creates a price cycle. Because as soon as people think any asset can't go down anymore or just doesn't ever go down anymore, they start buying more of it than they can afford to hold. They start buying that asset with borrowed money. And at some point they have to pay back that borrowed money, and then they end up upside down and blow up their portfolio and all that, which is not something any of you should do, because you should never buy Bitcoin with borrowed money. But anyway, if that starts to happen, then we will see a price cycle, because that's exactly what triggers a price cycle. So I tend to agree with the 60%, although the caveat, I guess maybe I'm more 50-50. The caveat here is anything that grinds sideways and goes up consistently produces huge returns year after year after year, and it's only a matter of time until people notice that. And then again, they start speculating on the upside, buying it with borrowed money, which creates exactly the huge upside run that causes that cycle to repeat. So, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If people are like, well, cycles are over and now it just goes up eventually all the time, well, that's exactly the sort of thing that would make people speculate on that and buy it with borrowed money, because it always eventually just goes up. And then, of course, that is exactly what produces the parabolic rise, followed by then a price crash because it wasn't sustainable. So I don't know. I'm more 50-50 of our price cycle's over. Now, what can you do? Because we don't know. Whether it's 60-40 they're over, whether it's, 50-50, the same strategy applies in all situations, which is if you buy as much Bitcoin as you can right now, then it doesn't matter. Because if the price does take off from 120,000 up to 180 or 220, so what? You just ride it out. Is it going to stay up there? Probably not. It probably will go through a correction, but you don't know how high it's going to go. You don't know how deep of a correction it will go through. So, but if you buy Bitcoin before that happens, you don't have to care. So for somebody like me, I don't actually care. If we go through a huge parabolic rise, sure, I'll take it. I might buy myself some nice things when the price seems crazy, which means go on a nice vacation. I don't know, buy myself an electric jet ski, or I don't know, something. I don't think I will, but if there's something nice I want and Bitcoin's up at 220,000 a coin and it seems unsustainable up there, hey, if there's something nice you want or some expense you want to pay off or something like that, not a bad time to do it if the price seems like it's going crazy. Now, the reverse is also true, that, when the price is down, you can not worry about it. You can just hold. There's no reason you have to worry about what the price is going to be, short or long term, if you're just holding. Because if we don't go through a parabolic rise and we all just chill out and Bitcoin keeps grinding higher, and boring us all to death on the way to $1 million per coin, well, great. You're in a good spot because you're buying Bitcoin and holding. So the way people get upside down on these things is they don't buy the Bitcoin right now. They wait and they let the parabolic rise in price be the validation that it's a good asset. So as the price rises 140, 160, 180, they use the price as their validation that Bitcoin is amazing, which means they're buying it only after the price rise. And that is a problem, because at 180,000, if it happens in the course of a month from 120 to 180, I can't tell you how sustainable that is. I can't tell you how high it's going to go. And no matter how high it goes, I can't tell you if it's going to have a price correction after it goes that high or not. The short take is nobody knows. And because nobody knows, you don't want to be in the position where you're trying to decide if you should buy a lot of Bitcoin when the price is just going crazy. It's way, way, way better to make the decision to buy Bitcoin when the price is not going crazy. Now, the good news is the price is not going crazy right now. That doesn't mean we're not sitting at 117,000. And so, it's not at a ultra deep discount compared to the recent past. But it is, below its all-time high. And we've been grinding around sideways-ish, in the $100,000 range for 3 or 4 months now, which means it feels like it can go higher, and sustainably so. So do I think it's a good time to buy Bitcoin? Yes, it's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin. And it's a lot easier decision to buy Bitcoin right now than to wait for a huge parabolic rise, suddenly get intense fear of missing out, and be stuck. Because I know what's going to happen. The prices, if it does go through a parabolic rise like that, people are going to be texting me as the price, leaps from 120 to 140 to 160. There's going to be all these people texting me and messaging me on Facebook Messenger saying, okay, Joel, I'm convinced. I should have listened to you all along. Now I'm ready to buy Bitcoin. Should I buy Bitcoin now? And I'm going to say the same thing I always say. Well, it's unfortunate that you waited for $160,000 Bitcoin instead of buying $120,000 Bitcoin. It's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin, but it was a better time to buy Bitcoin before this huge price rise. So don't let the price of an asset be your determinant of whether you think it's a good investment, because that means you're only ever buying it after a big price increase. And the best time to buy anything is when it's steeply discounted. And the next best time is when it's discounted. And the next best time is when the price is boring and grinding sideways, which is kind of where we are in Bitcoin right now. The worst time to buy any asset, again, never a bad time to buy Bitcoin, but the least good time to buy Bitcoin is when it's in a huge parabolic price run and everybody on the planet's talking about it, and everybody, random person, is buying Bitcoin for the first time and has no idea what it is. And you're stuck in that, you're stuck up there buying $160,000 Bitcoin with the masses. That is not where you want to be. You want to have bought all your Bitcoin before it does that. And that way you can just ride it out. And is it sustainable? Is it not sustainable? Doesn't matter. In the long term, it'll be a lot higher. So who cares if at the short term, one price is sustainable or not sustainable? It just doesn't matter. Because if you're holding it for the long term, then who cares if, the price bounces around? It goes high, it goes low, it comes back, it reverses. None of that matters as long as you have a long-term focus and you can just ride it out. So where I am with 100% Bitcoin allocation, meaning all of my liquid assets are in Bitcoin, I do not own any stocks, any bonds, or any US dollar cash. My wife does manage a small emergency reserve fund that is not in Bitcoin because I have a very high risk tolerance, and I wanted her to manage some money that was not allocated the same way I allocate it, but for all the money, which is the vast majority of our wealth, that I control or manage or oversee, it is 100% Bitcoin. And I feel great about that. And you know what? Our 4-year cycle's over. I don't even care. If they are over, great. If they aren't over, great. I don't care because I'm already allocated. And if you're already allocated, you don't have to care. If you're not allocated, then the price is going to take off, and then you're going to be in a tough spot trying to decide whether you want to buy $140,000 Bitcoin, $160,000 Bitcoin, or $200,000 Bitcoin. And it's just a lot easier to make that decision right now when we're not there.